Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back.
Good morning, Mike. How was your weekend?
It went very quickly. Been very busy with software and building things and lots of projects going on, but I took a little bit of time to relax. I have, for whatever reason, reinvigorated a nice good old cold or flu or something on me.
Oh, no.
I am just feeling congested. So I did a lot of laying low, a lot of these things. We were doing kind of a larger kitchen remodel in our kitchen, doing some refacing. We're leaving the cabinets alone, but we're doing new countertops, some big things that my wife has won. And so it's been very exciting to see that kind of come along. But needless to say, we've been eating out a lot because we don't have a kitchen. There's no sink. It's out of commission right now for a little bit.
Dude, is it we're doing a full revamp, or we're just doing like cabinets, like, a little
Like I guess you would call it like refacing the cabinets. So the cabinets are getting refaced. So they're
Okay.
and then all new doors and handles. We are adding some pull-out drawers inside the cabinets and then new countertops. So we're not like going down to like studs. We're not going down to like drywall. We're just using what's already there. So the structure is not changing. There's nothing. We're not adding new cabinets. We're not moving things around. It's all kind of the same stuff. So
okay.
But
needless to say, you can't use it.
Well, it's been nice because while we've been having work done on the cabinets, we've been able to use the kitchen. But now we're at the very end, and at the very end, they have to take out the plumbing, they have to put new countertops in, and that's when you lose like the sink. So hopefully today we get the use of our sink back, and we can start reusing our kitchen. We got now the hard decision: what kind of backsplash do you want?
Oh, you should call my wife. She was in a previous life a interior designer.
Oh, excellent!
What she does, and she married me. The
non-interior designer.
No, colors are not a thing. Did you know that, like, I think a lot of people, depending on the colors that you learned, those are the colors that you actually see. So my wife tested me out on this, and she's like, well, what colors? And I'm like, well,
you didn't learn mauve?
I know the rainbow, and I know the variations, teal.
Yes.
Slightly more teal.
Yeah, but very teal.
Yeah, I think my wife has 50 colors that she knows.
Wow.
And so, like, I was looking at something, oh, it's blue. She's like, no, it's acrylic, Yeah. I'm like, I couldn't see it, but I also never, learned what those colors are. So it's amazing, at least for an interior designer.
Interesting. I don't know how to. I mean, I'm not sure if I would be able to pick out or describe multiple colors for people. I could probably tell you like what some general colors are. To your point, Tommy, but I couldn't be all these nuanced colors like pea green, sea foam green, right. All these other like I would not know these things. I would just I'm very simple in that regard. It's interesting. I'm not good at I'm not good at making designs, but I'm really good at like looking at other things and being able to say, "Oh, I like that. Oh, this is a good design." So I'll kind of tie this back here to Power BI a little bit. When I look at colors or color palettes, I'm probably not the best on knowing how to create something from scratch, but I can do a really dang good job of going into Figma and finding a different report that I like and copying it or bringing down the colors or like, building a style that looks similar to that object. And that's kind of a lot of what I do when I build reports. I'll go find an image, a picture, or someone's mock-up of a dashboard, and I'll say, oh, that looks interesting. And then I'll go kind of riff on that design, make it my own, and then build a lot of extra features and pages and backgrounds for it. So a lot of times I'll do that. I'll take inspiration from other people's works. I think it's like the phrase, great artists, no, what is it? Great artists borrow or something like that, or steal. I don't remember what that phrase is.
Great, good artists borrow, great artists steal or copy.
That's it.
I think Steve Jobs said it. So can you articulate?
It's Pablo Picasso.
Oh,
great artists steal is what I think is the phrase. Well, at least that's what ChatGPT says.
Can you articulate when you see something like what you like about it, or is it more I just like that? Either when it comes to design or your kitchen?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I'd say I can probably pick up on pieces of it. I can kind of articulate what pieces of the design that I really like, and that's usually what I spend my time on mimicking. I'll give you just a really weird, maybe history, I guess. Previously, not previously. When we first got married, we didn't have much monies, and so every year we wanted to do Christmas cards. And so my wife would go online and she'd see all these Christmas cards, and she's like, "Oh, that's an interesting Christmas card." And she would show me the picture of the Christmas card, and I took it as a challenge to go into like a computer program and like mimic that card, like look at the details, figure out how to make it, replicate it. And I would replicate these Christmas cards by making my own design, and I would make it entirely out of like Illustrator, and then we'd go to the store and we'd print off a bunch of pictures or images off of like Walmart or whatever, and then we would set out a bunch of photos basically, but it was of an image that I had designed. Now granted, in the early days I had nothing but time. It was just time.
Yeah.
Computer build. So there was not as many kids. I could spend 4 hours just trying to figure out how to get the design of the thing to work. I'm Googling things. I'm learning about Illustrator and Adobe products, and maybe I'm using some Photoshop in there a little bit too. So doing all this work with this program just to make these good looking images. I think that helped a lot because now I can look at other images and know how they're built. It's like a skill. It's a little bit. It's something you have to kind of like learn how to do. And this is, I think, one of the things that is difficult for people in Power BI is we're really good at data modeling and bringing together the data structure. I think the majority of the people building reports don't have the eye or the visual or the aesthetic side of things, and that's where people need a little bit of help. Like, and you could easily spend as much time doing the data modeling, double that time, and you could do all the report visual styling, right? You could easily. So where do you cut corners? We've had this discussion a long time ago of like, what's the right balance of that inside your reporting? Anyways.
No, I'm honestly the same thing for me. The design side took a long time for me to actually, so to speak, understand what I was trying to do or actually put a design together that someone would make sense because I was analytical. I didn't know what I was supposed to build. I just had things that I thought looked good. But, I think books help. The biggest thing that actually helped me was asking someone else who had no stake in the data, like a friend or a spouse, like, hey, what is this telling you?
Yeah.
So
I like it.
Awesome.
Let's before we can jump into our news topic today, we kind of just did a little rambling here at the beginning, so we'll stop rambling here for a moment. Today we're going to talk about semantic-link-labs. What kind of updates have recently been coming out? This tool is amazing, by the way. This is an incredible tool. It does so many different things. And then what are kind of different scenarios or patterns on when you use semantic-link-labs to work inside your tenant? Now, to be very clear, semantic-link-labs is a Python library based on another library called SemPy, which I had to kind of really think about this one. So it's SemPy because semantic models, right? Semantic models is the first part of it, and then PY as Python. So it's like, Spark, PySpark, right? So it'd be PySpark, or the other languages, Spark SQL, right? So those are the things that are relating to that library. The library semantic link semantic link is directly built from Microsoft, maintained by them, and allows you direct access to the semantic models in your tenant. But it does a lot more of that. Semantic-link-labs extends this heavily. And so we're going to unpack a little bit more of semantic-link-labs, where to use it, where we're finding value with it right now, and jumping in there. That'll be our main topic for today. All right, Tommy, give us some news.
So there's a few things that actually went under the radar and because we didn't talk about it, I mean, no one read it, but I think a few articles. If we didn't say it, then it's not as important.
Don't talk about in the podcast that the feature actually get released. That's what we're talking about.
I'm actually surprised we haven't talked about this. So the first one I want to bring up is the template dashboards for workspace monitoring, which I thought was, maybe I don't know why the immediate interest wasn't there, but these real-time dashboards work with your workspace monitoring that you're used to. And they're actually community built, they're open sourced, and they can download through GitHub. And really what they allow you to do is go through your environment, and like basically the templates that we're used to when it comes to monitoring that Microsoft does, that
Yep.
we'd have to then like live connect if we wanted to modify this.
Mhm.
They're all this community built, and you can edit the desktop version and have it to your customization, which is really neat. So
So this is a tool that Microsoft has built to enable users to get better analytics about their workspaces. And it's using a monitoring event house. So this is streaming analytics directly into a collection, an area, or store basically, and then from that store, they're giving you some reporting, kind of off the shelf, out of the box tooling inside their Fabric Toolbox on GitHub. So Fabric Toolbox is the GitHub repo, and I'll make sure I put both of these links down here below in the chat windows for everyone to kind of see how that works. So let me get those over here to the chat window. If you want to go check those out, we'd highly recommend it. Really good tools. I'd be curious if anyone else is using these or seen them. One thing I will caution you here, I believe, my understanding of this, I haven't played with it, so I've read the documentation on it, but I haven't really gone into turning it on yet. My understanding is this is the same thing as turning on like log analytics for your workspace. So this could get very noisy, or there could be a lot of large volume of data coming over to your Fabric workspace. Anytime you send more things like this or turn on any kind of real-time eventing, you're immediately going to consume more capacity workspace. So just my big caution with this is you can turn this on. It's a good solution. It is streaming. However, just be cautious, because when you turn it on, it will send a lot of data, potentially every interaction, every query, all the details from the workspace that's happening will be sent directly to this stream. Good, but I would probably recommend don't turn it on and forget it. I would definitely recommend turn it on and just watch it. Make sure you turn it off, because it could potentially add a lot of costs or a lot of additional compute units to your SKU. So just be aware of that as you use the tool. So just a point out there.
That's probably a really good thing, because people might not know how much data is actually going in. And yeah, I thought it would be through the normal monitoring that you would get with the admin, but no. Interesting.
It's a different solution. So they're trying to be more transparent. I was talking with oh shoot, I forgot his name. He works for Microsoft, and he just did our Milwaukee user group area recently. The name will come to me like literally halfway through the podcast. But anyways, we had the PM speaking to all admin monitoring and going through the details there. Tommy, he spoke at your user group too.
Oh, Gil Raviv?
No, after Gil. That was the same session. It was after Gil was doing his monitoring.
Oh,
Our main speaker. Forgot his name. Anyways.
Milwaukee.
Yep.
I remember.
Used to work in Milwaukee Tool. Sounds like, I don't even know. Anyways, we'll figure it out later. I'll go get the name. Tommy will go look up his user group session, and he'll go get the name. Anyways, Tim Bindus, there it is. Someone in the chat remember it.
Hey.
Tim Bindus is a Microsoft employee and went through all the details of the monitoring app. There's a lot of things coming, and Microsoft is trying to make the entire modeling experience easier to understand. Thanks, Dan, while I stumbled around there for a bit. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on to the next one. What's our next news item, Tommy?
Another just kind of announcement, I guess. There's really no feature coming out, but it came out on January 29th. The private preview of
everyone can't get to it quite yet.
Yeah, of the migration assistant for Fabric Data Warehouse. So basically, ANSI and Microsoft were letting know that there would be a migration assistant last year. They're currently running a preview assistant, or a private preview of the migration assistant. They're looking for participants, and you can complete a form, and you can actually get access to the migration assistant. And again, that migration assistant is to help accelerate your SQL Server, Synapse, and other warehouses to Fabric Data Warehouse.
And I think the idea here is they're trying. So the reason they go to private preview is they think they've got the tool or the migration solution complete, but they're testing it out with the first couple of customers. So while we can't necessarily always access these private previews, just be mindful of. That means usually behind the private preview is there actually will release something fairly shortly. That means we're at the very last stages of bug fixing, feature refinement, and then there will be a tool or a repo or GitHub or something that will tell you how to leverage this migration. So I guess the point here is if you want to migrate SQL Server, SQL dedicated pools, or other warehouses to a Fabric data warehouse, you should now be able to soon go through a migration process for that. So anyways, there is a form on this page. So if you would like to participate in this one, you can apply to be part of the private preview. It's a form on the page that I just sent out in the chat window. So check that out. You can go see the form there if you would like to try and get involved. I'll actually just see if I can link to the form directly in case you want to go try this out. Anything else, Tommy?
One last thing that I'm surprised hasn't been one of our major topics. January 28th, Fabric update.
This is big. I think this is the biggest one of the news items here.
Yeah. Ownership takeover for Fabric items.
Yep.
And what this feature is really allows Fabric users with the right permissions to take ownership of an individual Fabric item. Since if you remember the same experience in Dataflow's Gen 1, because you couldn't collaborate,
yes.
So the only way you had to actually take over to edit. And so you could actually take over as a user in an individual Fabric item. And then the users, so basically some of the limitations there are does not support mirrored database items. But this is pretty cool because we've talked about ownership and governance and security here in a workspace.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to see this because I hope I hope it's not the same experience as Dataflow's Gen 1 takeover, which was just, can I edit? But at the same time, this is a big deal because we want to have some ownership of more than just a folder, more than just a workspace on particular items. Now, I don't think this modifies your ability to edit if you already could edit it, like let's say a particular item. Let's say if I'm in a lake house and I had permissions to write, nothing changes. I'm just the owner of that said artifact.
Well, I mean, this is the issue around like if someone leaves your organization and they own something like a lake house. So this is solving a direct problem where you had a lake house previously. If I created it and moved on or left the company or whatever, that item would be linked to me. It would be the owner would be my name. And in order to switch that ownership from me to Tommy, it was requiring a help desk ticket. You needed a help desk ticket to physically change the item, the lake house, from my name to Tommy's name. This is like basic featuring, right? This is basic features. You can't let people create things and not be able to switch ownership of them, especially if all the items in the workspace are attached to people. One of the things I'd like to see here with this one, I don't know if they've talked about it in this one specifically, but I think they are not talking about service principles or workspace principles yet.
No.
Right. So the one thing here to consider, it's in the limitations of this feature. It says Fabric item takeover does not cover ownership takeover as a service principal. So if you have a service principal or a workspace identity, those do not work with this takeover experience. And there are some other things here that don't support changes, right? Mirrored Cosmos database, mirrored SQL databases, mirrored Snowflake. These are the other features that are not quite there yet. I would imagine eventually they're going to close the gap on these things, but
yeah, they have to.
This was a big gap in my mind. Like I can't tell you the number of people that had pain around trying to move lake houses between users, and we were just stuck. And we're like, the best thing to do is a help desk ticket. That's absurd. Like this is very basic functionality. So it's good that they're cleaning this up. This is definitely a pain point of my own. I've gone through a number of projects where this was quite painful. I'm very happy to see this one being resolved.
Yeah, and I think there's plan to have API support so you can actually just kind of bulk edit and take over from a user, which will be really nice. Right now, everything's just the UI. Still, I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the API stuff is going to be really good. And APIs, I feel like, are required for more of the continuous integration, continuous deployment, the CI/CD type things, where you're going to need to programmatically like publish an item, let's say a lake house, and you want to regularly publish who has access to that item. Because when you think about like continuous integration, continuous deployment, a lot of people think it's deployment pipelines, which it is. It does some of that. But there's a lot of other things that you need in addition to that, like who's the owner of this item, who's the owner or members of the workspace. Did people accidentally add themselves to those workspaces? And when you go redeploy the items, do you want to again update the permissions to the workspace so that's always consistent and you have the exact right access to the items in the workspace? There's a lot more things that can go on when you deploy things, which the API will be, I think, very useful for assisting with that. Okay, that's it for news. Anything else we should talk about?
I think that's good from a news. And you got anything else?
Nope, that's good for me. That's all the fun things that I think I wanted to talk about for now. All right, let's jump into our main topic today. Tommy, give us an overview. We're going to talk about semantic-link-labs. Let's get a little bit of an overview of what that tool is.
Yeah, so semantic-link-labs is a Python package part of SymPy in Fabric notebooks that really allows you to do a ton of administration, governance, querying, analytics on all of your Fabric items. There's a huge parts of this when it comes to administration, getting groups. So all of your API calls that you normally do for those old school who had a PowerShell script from Rui or Romano, that old package, all of those calls are available in this Python package. So I don't have to worry about all those additional configurations, but it does a ton more. Really any artifact that I want to actually go through, like a semantic model, and I wanted to pull a table or a column and make a data from that, I can. If I want to get deployment pipeline information, I can. It's really the full stack in terms of help me manage my Fabric tenant.
I feel like semantic-link-labs requires a nice acronym. SLL, SLL, semantic-link-labs. Anyways, that being said, I wanted you to check out. So I'm putting a link in the description here. Semantic-link-labs is an extension of the SymPy library. The SymPy library is semantic-link, which allows the Python notebook to connect or attach to semantic models. Semantic-link-labs extends this. Semantic-link-labs goes way beyond just the semantic model. It adds things like touching the best business practice analyzer or automation around that. So BPA is a really great tool. That's something that came from Tabular Editor. That's kind of an idea that came from Tabular Editor, where you could make rules and test rules about labs and libraries about your semantic model, right? This column name is incorrect. There's a relationship in this model that seems inappropriate, right? There's a many-to-many relationship, right? It can detect those kind of things. It touches other things like the Vertipack analyzer. That's now been integrated into the tool. You can do other things, check things for Direct Lake, make sure your model is within the guardrails of what Direct Lake can do or not do. Refresh, clear your cache, run DAX queries. You can manage query scaling out on your different models. Visualize a refresh, what happens during a refresh cycle. You could look at the measure dependency tree. So basically you could pick a measure in the model and see all the other measures that depend on that measure inside a tree diagram. It's just amazing. It has a whole bunch of reporting things. And this is one of the parts of where I think this is why I'm so excited about semantic-link-labs, because we're talking about semantic model things. But then when we transition over to semantic-link-labs can do things in the report, the report has a best report analyzer, report best practice analyzer, and that runs also in semantic-link-labs. You can get report metadata. You can view broken reports. You can set a report theme, migrate things about reports, rebind reports. This is stuff that doesn't have any capability inside Tabular Editor. Tabular Editor has no capability for you to do any of these things out of the box. And Michael Kowalski is the one who's kind of building this project. It does a ton of other stuff around like capacities, lakehouses, notebooks. It talks to all of the APIs for Fabric. So it talks to all the PowerBI APIs, all the Fabric APIs, all the Azure APIs, and now Microsoft Graph APIs. And it also now supports service principals for using it to talk to things. I mean, this is like your Swiss Army knife. If it does everything.
Yeah,
That's
and
really excited about this tool.
I believe Kurt, we talked about this before with Kurt Bueller because he had an article about going through your entire report just using Senpai, like actually updating the theme, updating visual properties, or
Yes.
updating broken visuals.
Yeah, Michael
So
Kowalski has done demos of this, and then
yeah,
Kurt kind of picked up on it and also written through and did some talking about that as well. But I mean, when you think about semantic link labs, or you're thinking only semantic model, I want you to open your mind up and say this is has way more features than just the semantic model. It's bigger than that.
yeah, and no, exactly. I mean, one of the things too, they have direct lake migration for any of your models, which is absolutely insane. So, a few other things just to make sure that we're kind of covering all the things that it can actually do. Just this Python package. It can view report metadata. You said the report analyzer, view and measure the dependency tree, visualize a refresh, auto generate descriptions or measures in bulk. Lake houses, optimize lake house tables, vacuum lake house tables, um, migrate a Power BI improving capacity. So it's absolutely insane in regards to all the scenarios here. It's like you said, it's much more than just your Power BI model that we're used to being the only thing we can actually do something. It was the XMLA endpoint back in the day, which
Yep.
was it was awesome, but this really opens up all the Fabric artifacts and also what you can do.
So I was talking with Michael Kowalski recently about this exact tool, and it's kind of, he was explaining a little bit, and he was also talking about this in a speaking engagement he did over in the Fabric conference I believe it was Fabric conference over in Stockholm is where he was talking about this one. He came over and talked about it. But Michael Kowalski is on the CAT team. He's the one who kind of originated Semantic Link Labs. And while he was on the CAT team, he deals directly with customer advisory team. That's what that is. CAT team is the customer advisory team. So he deals directly with big customers or all customers. And initially he built a couple like Python libraries, picked it up, thought, oh my gosh, this is easy. Learned Python. Basically, he wasn't really a Python writer to begin with. He knew programming, but it wasn't really his forte. Learned Python, and in about a year, he had started building all these helpful tools and producing a lot of things that was making things easier. Well, now he's his full-time job is only maintaining, supporting, and building more features through Semantic Link Labs, because by him solving a problem with this tool, he's able to solve not just one customer's problem, he's solving a multitude of customers' problems all at the same time. So one thing I'm really excited about is when you go to the GitHub repo and look at all the releases, the release list is incredible on this tool. He is chunking out releases multiple times per month. So in 2014, he had 4 updates, 1 per week in November. He had 3 per week through December, and he's already had 2 in January and 1 in February. I mean, they're making a ton of stuff in here that's adding a bunch of really neat features. So it's almost hard to keep up with the tool because it's moving so fast. It's doing so many things. Really, really like it.
So, and we should give a shout out, real shout out to our Australian friend Gilbert from 4Movies. That's actually where the idea to really dive into this a little more came from. One of the cool scenarios that I saw was what Gilbert did was basically look to automate updating incremental refresh policy, and he was able to do that with the Semantic Link Labs, which is insane.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about, though. It's this kind of stuff. It's heavy automation. So this is for professional developers. These are for users who are very, very much in the weeds in the code of things. And so let me just, I'm going to give you my perspective on this one. There's a couple things here. The combination of Semantic Link Labs in concert with Hymdal Editor, in concert with DAX Query View, those 3, let's call them tools, I guess, for lack of a better term. Those 3 tools replace almost every single other external tool that's out there that's talking about the semantic models. I think these tools can do everything else, everything other tools can do and more. And the bonus here is, as I compared to Tabular Editor, I don't have to learn C# just to write a scripting or an automation. I can just write it in Python, which in my opinion is much easier to write.
So here's a question, because you actually brought up something very intriguing, because if you think about all of the current API or developer ways to modify, read your Fabric tenant, you talk about XML endpoints, Power BI REST APIs, and then now there's really Senpai Labs. If you are the data czar or an organization, do you care how people are actually, if let's say, let's take it first with the heavy developer, the people who actually do need to automate, their Power BI items or Fabric items using some, again, custom endpoint. Are you going to, would you push everyone to only use the semantic-link-labs or Senpai?
Compared to
API, XML endpoint, PowerShell. I think those are the really three ways that you can actually, in a sense, connect or talk to Power BI.
Well, I mean, let's also talk about other external tools, right? There's DAX Studio.
Yeah.
And there's also Tabular Editor, right? So let's look at so I'm going to look at all the tools and say, okay, which ones provide the highest level of automation, right? Tabular Editor and semantic-link-labs provide high levels of automation. I have really struggled, just me personally. I've tried to get Tabular Editor 2 to run in some sort of deployment pipeline where the deployment pipeline runs something and Tabular Editor like recompiles the code or deploys something. It's difficult, and I couldn't get it to work correctly. And the documentation is okay, but Tabular Editor wasn't really the right tool, like a CLI, command line interface, right? I want a CLI to be able to say, look, this is where my model lives. I want to package my model and deploy it to this workspace. Well, it doesn't, it works, but you have to be like really in the weeds of things. It's just more difficult. I'd rather write a Python notebook and use that to make a sequence of cells that does what I want. So if I think about so that's one difference there, right? I've already ran into other problems with other tools that is difficult to write code for, or it's difficult to write, command line interface type actions, right? The semantic-link-labs makes this much easier. Also, I'm writing just pure Python. And the functions, there are way more functions in semantic-link-labs, like refresh your semantic model, optimize things, get this measure, run this SQL query. I mean, there's just a lot of nice features around it. The functions are easy to understand. It's easy to run those. It just makes a lot more sense to me. So now let's compare the pricing of all these tools, right? So Tabular Editor, if you're going to go professional with this one, it's going to cost you a little bit of money to get the tool. It is a premium level tool. It is for the developer. When you need to start manipulating partitions and going deep on the tables and the models get really large, you're not going to want to edit a model using desktop. You're just not going to want to. You're going to outgrow desktop very quickly. Now when I have semantic-link, so now that I have Tyndall Editor and now that I have DAX Query View and semantic-link-labs, these are all free tools. It doesn't cost me a dime. Now, then I might be writing a bit more code. I might have to write a bit more, cells inside my Python notebook in semantic-link-labs, but I'm willing to learn that in exchange for free, right? So it may not be the most optimized tool out there, but I don't have to learn C#. It's a free tool, and I can do way more things, not only just at the semantic model level, but also at the report level. To me, I'm sold. When I was watching Michael Kowalski talk about this, he did a demo where he went to, I don't know if it was a lake house. I can't remember exactly what he was doing. He went somewhere to a lake house. He read the metadata from the lake house. He then created his own tables. I think it was his best business practice. Sorry, let me step back here.
Yeah.
He was using Best Business Practice Analyzer, BPA. He went to a workspace. He said, this is my workspace. Run the BPA tool on every model in a workspace. He ran every model. He got all the rules back. He wrote the tables to a lakehouse. Once the tables were written to the lakehouse, he made a semantic model programmatically, albeit he made it from scratch using code. And then he made the report programmatically. He connected the semantic model to the tables. He connected the report to the semantic model, and everything just worked. And he had from a single notebook. He had run all the tools for best practice analyzer, made the semantic model, and made the report all within a couple lines of code. That's an automation. Like that can't be done in any other tool. And I looked at that and I said, this single tool, semantic-link-labs, just killed every single external tool that's out there dealing with semantic models and even some lightweight report editing stuff as well. I mean, this is incredible. It does so many things.
Yeah, my PowerShell scripts had their day in the sun back in the day. It could do some crazy things, but it's interesting with the semantic-link-labs. The official documentation, because it's obviously coming from Semantic Link, which is kind of the actual package, and Microsoft actually developed that. And the official documentation actually says that the semantic link is a feature to establish a connection between models and data
Correct.
science.
Yes.
Right. So, it's funny that it was only really kind of initially built for just the data science side, because they're thinking, hey, Python notebooks, Jupyter notebooks, that's data science. That's going to really just be that data science sphere. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So
but that's just a semantic model. I mean, that's just semantic. That's SemPy. That's all that is. The labs part of this makes it really rich because now this is including like a whole bunch of other things. Like it has a ton of administration level features in it. That's awesome. Like it's just absolutely incredible. And that for me, I'm like, oh yeah. So again, if you're a new user, you're thinking like, what should I be learning now? You guys are talking about Tyndall view. You're talking about DAX query view. You're talking now about semantic-link-labs. Dude, if you have Fabric in your tenant, 100%, you should be learning semantic-link-labs immediately. It will make your life way easier. Now, it's very code-centric. It's very detailed. But if you want to be work smarter, not harder, this is the tool for you.
So, man, that's interesting because I think we still know, and I'm still on the side that most data professionals or Power BI professionals probably haven't by now, maybe have like opened a Jupyter notebook or done a notebook, but that's probably not been their forte, right? So if if we're introducing Fabric to my organization, let's say,
Yep.
and up until this point, the business intelligence team has been Power BI, all Power BI.
Okay.
Much more likely to have been doing like to take Rui Romano's PowerShell script to actually do some automation to get workspace monitoring and activity than I ever was to touch Python or Spark. So if you are with that kind of in mind, again, data engineers, people in data science, definitely, obviously, this is like well at home. This is nothing new, but
Yeah.
a lot of
If you're a data scientist, you're going to know Python. Like that's going to be a given. If you're a data engineer, you may or may not know Python. You probably will know, like, I think you would know more of like a SQL, right? You'd be more of like, I think of data engineering, maybe a little bit of DBA, but a lot more data engineering. There's other tools that are a lot more graphical interface. So, you don't have to actually know actual code. You can use things like Talend or other data engineering type programs that do all the work for you. But I'd argue like Python is becoming a very common language. Any of the new computer science majors that I'm talking to nowadays, they all know it. They all know Python coming out of there. Not saying you have to hire a computer science major to do this kind of stuff, but like it's taught everywhere. It's going to be like the language that everyone knows.
So let me ask you, who are you teaching then? If you had a team of just Power BI, right? Because we're still in this migration period. We're still introducing Fabric to an organization that might have previously been just Power BI. If I'm listening to this podcast right now and I still don't have Fabric, but we're potentially going to introduce it in my organization, and I've been the Power BI Pro and DAX and Power Query, yada yada yada. How long is it going to take for you to expect someone in that space, that persona, to start using semantic-link-labs?
Say that again. When do you want to? You're asking like when's the right time to use semantic-link-labs?
Yeah. So if I'm an organization that we're maybe about to introduce Fabric, don't have it, I'm listening to this podcast, from the day that my organization opens up the Fabric to the organization, how long or what would you expect that person to begin to start using semantic-link-labs?
Yeah, this is a good question. So let's talk about the maturity of your organization, right? So just because you're turning on Fabric doesn't necessarily mean your organization is immature in Power BI, right? If your team is larger, if you have rigor around using best practice analyzer on your semantic models, or you're looking to tune or optimize your models, right? That right there already tells me that your company's maturing, right? When you're getting to the place where you're optimizing models and making them more performant to make sure that they're not bigger, what happen? How the progression typically goes here is users start with Power BI, they build models at the pro level, their models get larger, they absorb more data. At some point, they outgrow the pro licensing and they move into potentially premium per user licensing, which gives you much larger semantic models. At some point, you run into problems. The model runs slow. The visuals aren't working right. And you need to start analyzing what's going on in the model. Your model design now needs to get better. So, I mean, this is my progression too, right? I started making crappy models at the beginning just because it worked. And I would, okay, it works. Let's move on. I got more mature. And then as I developed better models, I got better at making those models more efficient.
Right.
Okay? So where does semantic-link-labs fit here now, right? If your company is in a place where your organization is mature around optimizing, tuning, building best practices in your models in your organization, you may want to regularly review those things. If you have a larger team building models, there's going to be people regularly reviewing or should be regularly reviewing your models to make sure you're not building stuff that's going to abuse your capacity. So that being said, when you go over to Fabric, if your organization is at that level of maturity where you're tuning, driving for optimization, semantic-link-labs will be a great free tool, and again, I'm like free, to help you automate more of that. Here's, like, let me give you an example, right? I have a deployment process. We're going to deploy some kind of reports. Part of your deployment process will likely be running best business practice analyzer on your model in either test or, maybe you run it in all your production models once a month, something along those lines, right? That's the kind of stuff you're going to need to do. When your models get really large in size, you're going to have lots of partition management to handle. You're going to need other tooling to help you adjust, manipulate, and then as your models get larger, you're not going to want to just flat load all the tables. Sorry, another thought here.
Yeah.
Users who start with Power BI, they typically load the entire table all the time. Like when you start, just load the whole table. Well, eventually you learn that, well, not all data is changing from the source system. Maybe I should be smarter about how I incrementally load the data. And as your data grows in volume, you also don't want to load like 100 million records every night. That's inefficient. It's just wasteful at that point. So then you start thinking about, okay, how can I, in the best way possible, only load the data that I care about, only load the data that's changing, right? Now you have to do more things around partition management, incremental refresh.
Yeah, but
you've got to think about that. This is where the heavy automation of semantic-link-labs supports this.
No, so it supports it, but man, so that is actually a harder sell for me if I'm going to do from the partition management, because odds are I've been doing this with a UI, whether it's actually in SSMS or Tableau Editor 3 for a long time. If that's the case, I'm sure it's faster in semantic-link-labs, but again, to sell someone who has to then ramp up or create all these notebooks is like, okay, like where's the value add for that case? To me, I'm thinking really semantic-link-labs is not for everyone. Like every single Power BI developer or every Power BI developer is going to want to get their hands on semantic-link-labs. If anything, it's probably one or two people creating them that are going to help manage a lot of other things.
I think most of what I'm seeing around semantic-link-labs is around like, so Greg asks a great question in the chat here. He says, do you start, like, are you at the place right now where you're going to recommend or start recommending building greenfield, brand new semantic models using only semantic-link-labs? Is that what you're saying? Let me just say, it's possible to do that, but I would also argue that you may not want to start with that. Like it's building brand new models, probably not the best opportunity for this one. It looks like a lot of the features around semantic-link-labs are focusing, at least initially, on debugging, best business practice analyzer, incremental refresh partition pieces. There's a whole bunch of Power BI API stuff that you need to do that as an admin or a expert, you're going to need to use, period. And you don't have to use PowerShell now. You don't have to use other tools. Like,
Yeah.
it just handles all the authentication for you. So a lot of these other things that are used, it just makes everything so much easier. So I guess in that regard, I don't know if I answered the question right.
No. So what? So my question was about the people using semantic-link-labs. I think there's the misconception is it's not going to be for every Power BI developer. Not every single heavy enterprise developer is going to be needing to use semantic-link-labs. To your point, there's probably an admin or someone setting it up for on behalf of the team or on behalf of a department, right? Because is everyone going in to utilize semantic-link-labs? Probably not. But someone's probably.
If you're a professional, yes, you are. Right? If you, how many Power BI professionals should be using VertiPack Analyzer? How many? All of them?
Sure.
Yes. If you're doing if you're a professional in Power BI analyzing, every single one of you should be using VertiPack Analyzer. It tells you how many columns there are, what's the size of those columns, which columns are most wasteful or not. If you are any kind of professional, everyone should be. That's already built into semantic-link-labs. So right there, it's a single function. It says SemPy Labs, VertiPack Analyzer, send it the data set. Boom, done. VertiPack Analyzer comes back. I don't need a third party to connect to a tool. I don't need to do other stuff. It's just literally right there. Boom, done. So, like, I think I disagree with your statement. Should any Power BI professional be using semantic? Yeah, they all should be using it. If you're a professional, if you know what you're doing around semantic models and you have access to Fabric, 100%, you should be learning about and using different modules from semantic-link-labs. It will make you more efficient.
Yeah, you should absolutely be using that. But here's the thing: if every single individual is creating their own notebook, right, and then just kind of from a Wild West point of view, like the BPA.
So
are we pushing the data somewhere, or do we have just 1,000 notebooks right now? Like,
no. There's again, this if you're a professional developer, I'm already assuming you're going to be starting to pull some of this stuff together and centralize it, right? The same way that you're centralizing like lake houses and notebooks already in your data engineering, right? You're gonna start making workspaces. Your professionals should all be working together, and hopefully people are sharing notebooks between each other as well too.
And I think that's the thing. There's a lot of this where I think from an overlap point of view, where like that BPA, there's even a run bulk BPA. Why can't there be more like, hey, I'm going to be the one creating these notebooks on behalf of the team that just run. So
I'm not saying you're not doing that. That's not what you're describing has nothing to do with using semantic-link-labs. That is all to do with your company's internal process. Do you have people smart enough to build things that everyone can reuse? That's your process. That has nothing to do with the semantic-link-lab itself.
So, and
I think you're arguing for something that is just a totally different scenario. Like you're arguing for, does your company have process?
No. So here's my worry. All the things in here are great for the individual. You take 10 people. Let's take 10 people that are now all running semantic-link-labs on the wild, right? Like some of these are really powerful. We're still dealing with APIs. And this is the argument here. You're still dealing with the APIs that require some permissions that can do a lot here, especially from an automation point of view. If you are not careful, everyone's running through this.
What are you so worried about? I don't understand. I literally do not understand your question here. Like how, yes, there are some modifying things, but if you don't have access to the workspace or don't have access to the items in that workspace, you can't touch them. You can't modify things you don't have access to. So it's not like this is ripping across parts of workspaces that are giving you more access to things you couldn't have before. Sure. Like, so right. I think
service principle that's
a moot point. Like it's not gonna, that's no point in my mind. Now, what I will argue though is you are right, but once someone has figured out a pattern here, these patterns get set, they just run and you just move on. Like, for example, like you're talking about running VertiPack Analyzer on all your models. Maybe that's something you decide is a tool or an automation you want to run every night. Load your models at the end of loading your models, maybe like in the morning or maybe even in the evening, run VertiPack Analyzer on all your models and store the data to the lakehouse. This is the point. someone says, I'm going to do this. These are the workspaces that are important to me. And they just build the automation and walk away. Now the notebook can be scheduled with a pipeline. Now you can have all this extra data coming off of your semantic models, the metadata stuff, and you can just capture that all away into Lakehouse. And this provides one huge, huge layer of automation going back to your organization. So now you can say, we've run BPA on all our models. We've run Vertipack Analyzer on all our models. And by the way, we're already funneling all the data to a Lakehouse in a common data structure format. And now you can be reporting on that. And so now instead of having everyone going in and finding problems with models, you can be more proactive. Hey, this column is really small. It dropped a lot one night. What happened? There was a data load issue. Okay, now we can go look at it. Right? This model is getting extremely large in size for some reason. It's been rapidly growing over the last couple of weeks. What's going on? What's happening? Did something change? These are all the signals and things that you're going to want to administrate and monitor as your professional in the Power BI and Fabric space. This tool just gives you the capability to do this at a much higher degree.
And I completely agree with that. And honestly, a lot of these things too, what I would love to see is someone who's a Python champion or who already has that experience. A lot of these could be made into I don't want to use the word templates, but for anyone who's using Power BI, it's like, hey, you want to view your measure dependencies? I've created that notebook for the team. Right? All you have to do is just plug in your workspace, plug in your semantic model, and it will run, rather than taking someone who has to try to, in a sense, create their own notebook. A lot of these could be not even from a governance or security point of view, from just an adoption point of view. So I believe semantic-link-labs is in preview or not in preview.
It's neither. It's just a semantic-link
lab.
It's just a project that Microsoft has built and supports it. So it's a wheel. It's a package that you import or you install into your notebooks.
Okay.
So my understanding is Semantic Link is by default installed with all your Python. Right. So that's already part of the image of all your items. The semantic-link-labs is not installed by default. So you have to install this package and into the notebook. You can even set up a custom environment in Spark that says, hey, we're going to just use this. I will argue, though, I have tested Semantic Link in both Python and in Fabric notebooks. So when I've done that, it works really well for both of them. So the Python notebook only and the Spark notebooks in Python, PySpark, semantic-link-labs and semantic-link both seem to work in both of them very well, which is awesome. That makes everything incredibly easy for me as well.
So as we get near the end, and I think we've talked about from the user point of view, the capabilities, I don't think either of us are going to argue in terms of how much better this is than PowerShell or even some of the old solutions. Mike, if you took a team today and are you implementing semantic-link-labs across the board, and what would be the top 3 things you're going to migrate from the old APIs or XMLA to your point you talked about? We talked about incremental refresh. We've talked about the activity log. What would be the top 3 things that you think semantic-link-labs could automate or from a priority point of view?
Yeah, if I'm looking at the things that are the best opportunities in semantic-link-labs, it's all around the Vertipack Analyzer. So that's really a good, useful tool. I'm also thinking that it is a lot of the automation things around getting data out. Vertipack Analyzers there, Best Business Practice Analyzer, those are available to us. Doing things in bulk there, super useful. I'm finding a lot of value in complex refresh patterns inside semantic models. So which partition to refresh? When your models get really large, I like using Semantic Link to automate more of the model experiences and automate more of the how to very strategically refresh these models. Typically, this is all done in like PowerShell or other scripting things. If I can so think of it this way, I have a pipeline. I'm going to load some data into a table. That data is now being loaded into semantic models, but if that data is really large, if we're talking about big data stuff, you don't want to refresh the whole thing. It's just too much. So what you can do now in the pipeline is run your loading process, copy the data, and then at the end of it, you can execute a notebook that then does the fancy refreshing policy that you may need. Again, you're now at the place where you're optimizing your model. You're bringing costs down because I don't want to refresh the entire model all the time. There's a whole bunch of automation things here that I think really make this incredibly powerful. So it's to me, if you're an admin of anything Power BI, 100%, you better be learning semantic-link-labs. It will make your life 100% easier. It will simplify a lot of the mundane tasks you've already been doing. And I think, Jake in the comments here is making a really good point. This semantic-link-labs is like that stick sometimes that you need to beat the developers over the head with, hey, you're not doing this right? Either you automate this and you start sucking out the data in mass, and then you can now go back and have the conversation with, hey, your model doesn't conform to our best business practice analyzer. Right. Hey, your model is getting too large. Hey, these are proactive things you could use that's going to help you make everything easier to work with in Power BI, or even Fabric for that matter. So anyway.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think for me, the best practice analyzer obviously is a gold standard and be able to push that data in. I was trying to look, can you connect and actually do the activity log with the semantic-link-labs or no?
Yes. Yeah, activity logs. You can do activities based on a workspace. You can do activity. You can do the artifacts. There's a cataloging API that it hits as well. So it could also do it. Again, these are API calls that would have been 3 or 4 calls in a row, right, to get the data out. What this thing does is it just waits. So to do like the cataloging calls of a workspace,
jeez,
you could. I'm just telling you, like this is my point, Tommy. Like the fact that this tool has so many functions in here. Like it does so many things. It's just incredible how capable this is. And this is where I'm like, okay, fine. It may be a little bit harder to do some of these things that I used to do in Tabular Editor or DAX Studio. Maybe. Right? But now that I have all these really rich things in a notebook, why would I want to use other tools? Instead, now I can just use this notebook to automate things. Like let me give you another example. DAX Studio. Why do I use DAX Studio? I use DAX Studio to write and execute DAX queries. Well, I can write them now in a notebook. I can have multiple cells. To me, the experience of writing multiple DAX statements inside a notebook is actually much better, honestly. Another reason you
really?
Well, I mean, think of it, right? If I have a cell and I need to copy the cell again multiple times, I can just take my DAX code and write a different evaluate statement, and I can see the results of the prior statement and the new one right side by side. I would prefer to write DAX in notebooks, honestly. So to me, that's a better experience. I want to track all my changes in different cells and compare them. Love that experience. So you can also do timings with things. So if DAX Studio does a good job of timing how long a query will run. And we all know you can write DAX multiple different ways. Well, why not write a notebook that accepts a DAX statement and then runs all the tests you need to do? Right now in DAX Studio, there's no automation around, okay, I'm going to run this DAX query 3 times, clear the cache each time. All that can now be automated in a notebook. So now you can do DAX Studio level things with automation and repeatedly doing automated runs on things without requiring DAX Studio anymore. Like this is where I'm like, your mind is now the limit of your creativity. It's not the tools anymore. That's maybe my point. Sorry, I'm getting really excited about this one.
Awesome. Well, dude, I hope for a lot of people, if you were hesitant on starting with Notebook and starting with Python, you're like, I really don't have a good reason. This is probably the most perfect reason to start learning and dive in.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Regardless, I think this is a tool in your arsenal that you will need. Like it's definitely for sure. Now, has it caught up to all the other rich tools that are out there? Maybe not quite yet. But based on the capabilities that it can do now and the things that the semantic-link-labs can do that other tools cannot, I'm making a bet. I think this tool is going to continue to get better. And I think it's going to continually close the gap more and more and more between all the other tools that you have out there. And, for the companies that complain, like there's various companies that complain like, well, we can't use these other tools because, it's a third-party tool and Microsoft should just support it and all this stuff. Now it's supported, right? A lot of the other tools that are out there, you don't need them now. I don't think you need to use Tab Editor. I don't think you need DAX Studio anymore. I think this closes the gap on a lot of those things. So anyways, that's where I stand on this one.
Awesome. Well, this has been wonderful. I hope people who are just diving into Fabric or just getting started, and just to make sure for those who are still on Power BI Premium, this is a Fabric only, correct?
This
You
is
need
a
a Fabric.
Fabric only feature. So this is, we're talking notebooks. Semantic Link Labs only works in a notebook experience. So you have to turn on Fabric to get this working. So, but you can go check it out in a trial. You can get a Microsoft Fabric trial on your users if that is allowed by your admin. So you can go check things out. This is a great place to get started. I think this makes a lot of the admin stuff or API pieces that you normally couldn't touch. It makes it way easier to get into touching these APIs for both Fabric and Power BI. The authentication stuff is just handled. So I'm super pro. This tool is amazing. I should probably do an entire YouTube series on different patterns that this thing can do and how amazing it is. Because I think there's a number of fundamental features that have come out for Power BI in this year. This is one of these fundamental features that people will need to learn. It will change how you build stuff moving forward. It will make you more efficient. So you've got to learn it. I think it's just it's a given. Anyways,
Awesome.
Any other final thoughts, Tommy, for you?
No, I think this is perfect. I think for a lot of people who are not sure how to get started, this is what a better or what a perfect way to get started with all the things that you're already doing from an automation point of view and just getting started with Python notebooks.
Excellent. With that, we just want to say thank you very much for all the time you spent on the podcast today. I thank you for just checking out us and looking around semantic-link labs. I think you're going to love it. It's a great feature. If you like this discussion, if you didn't know about semantic-link labs and you want others to kind of see the surface area of what semantic-link labs can do, please share the podcast with other people. I think it's a great opportunity just to kind of get yourself exposure to things you're not used to. So with that being said, we really, really appreciate it if you would share the podcast with other people. We don't advertise. We just do this for fun. And if you found value from this, we'd love it if you'd share it to somebody else. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Share with a friend since we do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to PowerBI.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. and join this conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
Well, thank you very much. Hope you learned something new today. We appreciate your time and your ears. Good luck, and we'll see you next time.